So in the wake of the Kenosha shootings, I've just been thinking, you know, everybody's just feeling like, why is this happening again? Why another one? What's the issue here? What's the problem here? And I was just thinking about how this article that I read recently. I read this article that profiled the police officer that was involved in rendering those 7 bullets into Mr. Robert Blake. I mean, Mr. Jacob Blake rather. And what was funny about that article was that the article just kind of went into his background, right? They went into how, oh, he went to this high school. He's 31 years old now. He went to so and so high school. He participated in various activities, but wasn't really like, no one really remembers him from there, or wasn't really like super this or that. I suppose the point is the article was trying to say that somehow he was kind of maybe like a loner of some sort in high school and was involved in this, but not. But it was kind of dumb because those things wouldn't make this officer, a dangerous person to anybody else. And the idea that, I mean, how many people really are gonna be like student body president or valedictorian or whatever? And sometimes those people are the same person, because at my high school, I remember in my class, I think possibly whoever was in student body president was also valedictorian or whatever. In my sister's class, she was both of those things. So you see, like, so the idea that it's like, oh well, he went to so and so high school, he was in this activity, but like no one remembers, he kind of hung out by himself, but no one thought he was racist. That has nothing. It has nothing to do with anything about him. His profile as a high school student pretty much fits like 60% of the people in the country, and so then they're all prone to be. The things that stood out to me were the following: the fact that there were only 5 people in his high school graduating class who were black. So it just made me think, okay, so it just seems like this person is not used to being around. He wasn't that around that many black people during his high school years. And then what also stood out to me was listening to some of his mentors. I just thought, okay, well, I'll listen to people around him and look at what the leadership is like in the sheriff's department in his organization. And then I listened to that the tape of the sheriff saying how he thinks that, you know some of these black men who are making babies everywhere need to be warehoused. And he was serious too. He was seriously like saying that they need to be warehoused, and that Amazon could use those warehouses later for something else. And he was basically like advocating for creating a concentration camp for, I guess, certain black males, maybe not all, maybe some of them that he thinks are just like, it was just really, really bizarre. And he was saying this like in his, um, it wasn't like something that like someone caught on tape when he was at home or something, in his capacity of the job he was doing. So it wasn't like some like pissed off rant that he was making off to the side one day when, he was walking with a friend or something. No, this was something that he was, saying on a podium within his capacity as a sheriff, was advocating for concentration camps, for sort of warehousing, for, I don't know, I guess like, men he thinks who are responsible just having. It was just really weird because it was just like, what makes him think that he's so much better than anybody else, even if they have like, 8 different babies by 4 different moms or whatever? Does that mean it's okay for him to say, and to say those things publicly too, to say those things in front of his colleagues and in front of people he's mentoring? After all, he's, as the sheriff, is leadership for all these other, young men that are there. So I thought, okay, well, if this 31-year-old police officer that, fired these shots into Jacob Blake, if he went to high school where there was only like 5 black people that in his graduating class, and he is being mentored under the leadership of a sheriff who thinks that like, whatever, those people are having too many babies, we should just create warehouses for them and just like lock them up or just prevent them, just whatever. If he's being like, being led by people who think like that, then it doesn't really surprise me that, that we can end up in a situation where, that we can end up in a situation where he handled the Jacob Blake situation the way it did. It's kind of, kind of, if you just look at all the situations, circumstances surrounding it, it kind of, um, it makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, that's very tragic, and it's unfortunate. And I don't know, you know, I mean, I just, I thought about this in terms of the Ferguson, Missouri issue too. I just don't understand why so much of the time these communities that are majority black are being policed by by police departments that are like 97% white half the time, or people that have no experience, who've seen like, I don't know, five black people before in their life or something. It just doesn't really make sense. It seems really unhealthy. I mean, could you imagine the opposite? Could you imagine policing like, you know, white neighborhoods or whatever that are known to be predominantly with black police officers who only seen like five white people before in their life? Wouldn't that be weird? So it's like a lot of times I just feel like, you know, a lot of times the people that are the officers that are being used to police this don't identify with these people at all. And that's bad because then they're not protectors of the people, or they're not understanding. They're just like, they just react. And if something makes them uncomfortable, forget it. 8 bullets at you, 7 bullets at you, whatever. You know, if they're uncertain how to. So given that kind of situation, it makes sense that the 17-year-old, what isn't he, Kyle, whatever, he was able to walk freely with a gun and arm, having shot people, and he didn't really bother them. They weren't really like, you know, if you literally just transplanted, just created blackface on him right then, you put him right on that same street walking, he probably would have been shot at. So, because, but it makes sense though that given the profile that he had, that he didn't, given that, you know, he was a white guy carrying a gun, that he didn't, I mean, he probably reminded them of their, I don't know, their friend, their nephew, whatever, they didn't react the same way to him, where Jacob Blake was in a more unfortunate situation. So, you know, these are things we need to consider, is that, like, you know, we need to try policing these communities with people who relate to the community more, instead of, you know, it doesn't make any sense to not do that. It's really sad to just send people there who don't identify or relate to those people at all. It completely, it's a big problem. It's not good. It's not good at all. There's no point in the police being there, because what ends up happening is that lives end up getting lost in situations that had nothing to do with such a thing in the first place. I mean, what was the Blake situation about? It was a domestic dispute, and he was supposedly mediating, and then he got mad. No, no one had any guns. No one was doing any of that until the police showed up, you know? So it's like, and that's not good. It's not good if the situation is escalated by the showing up of the police. Quite honestly, I don't think his family should have called the police in the situation. If it was my family and we were arguing amongst each other, we wouldn't have called the cops. We know better. We just know that unless it's really serious, don't, because they can escalate. They can make the situation worse, because they're armed with, you know, with authority. They're armed with this authority to shoot and to do all these things. And you don't know where they're coming from. You don't know if you're the third black person they've ever seen in their life. You don't know if they're the sheriff that's talking to them all the time is telling them things like, yeah, we just need to put them in warehouse. You don't know if that person's telling them stuff like that. And those are the things in their head. And you pick up a phone and you're like, yeah, you know, we were just arguing about this. Can you come over and help us? What makes you think they're coming to you is going to help? What makes you think them showing up is going to help in a situation like that? So I think people also just really need to really rethink why they're calling the cops in the first place. You know, some situations just don't require that, and they need to keep in mind more that, like, these cops are just human beings. I don't care how much training they have, whatever. They're human beings that are defined by where they went to high school, what kind of parents they had, what kind of leadership is in their company. They're defined by all that stuff. They're just human. They're not going to be perfect. They're authorized to carry guns to react to things. That's not good. Just keep those things in mind before you just start, you know, picking up a phone and calling the police. It's not, you know, it's not the smartest thing to do all the time. You know, it's just, and then that just brings me to the whole, you know, whole issue of, I was thinking about how that related to um, the matter of what's his name, Chadwick Boseman passing, the famous movie actor that's in, you know, Black Panther movies, and that's in a lot of, and just, you know, how he talked about one of his first roles, you know, graduating from Howard University. He was out trying to, he was um, cast in a role on a soap opera, I guess, and a pretty known soap opera that's, you know, one of the well-known soap operas that's on TV. I think they're on ABC. I'm not sure anymore. But what happened in that situation was that, you know, he was playing somebody who had like a deadbeat dad or a mom that was on heroin or whatever. All these situations, just kind of like this you know, black kid that was from the wrong side of the streets or whatever. And he was trying to, and they told him with permission, they gave him permission to like give input into the character, give input. And he was trying to tell them, you know, he doesn't want that this character to be this total stereotype, and he wants the character to have, you know, a talent or something, or just more, you know, just more attributes to him, because he doesn't like these portrayals that are so stereotypical. He thinks it's unhealthy for you know, black people to see, unhealthy for people who police black people to see, unhealthy for people who are around black people. He just didn't want that there. Well, in any case, so but they didn't listen to him, and they fired him for for trying to steer them away from making the role so stereotypical, and they cast somebody else, of course, Michael B. Jordan, who's also very talented as well, in that role. And it just had me thinking how, like, sometimes it's kind of like, you know, it feels I think I can see how it feels like you damned if you do, damned if you don't sometimes. Because here in this case, he is trying to kind of make things better. So even you know, being that he is so excited to have this opportunity to be in this role, and he's decided to use this opportunity to kind of make a better image and make a better, you know, just make a decent exam. I mean, the character was not written by him. It was written at somebody who's from, and he couldn't fix that, but he was trying to improve it a little bit. And that attempt to do that was met with like rejection, was met with like, no, you don't need to be doing that. So it just goes to show you that that we're all responsible. It's not just the leadership at the at that police department in Kenosha that's responsible. It's the way that, you know, movies are told, the way that everything is told that is responsible. And it's been that way for a long time. And there are a lot of people who realize that, but they just don't know, you know, what they can do about it. But what I would call other people to do is to realize, whether if you're a movie writer, director, and if you're a studio, if you're an actor, always remember that, you know, this kid, I mean, well, yeah, him too, but also the police officer in the Blake case, who only had 5 black people in his class, is watching your movie or is watching your shows, watching this. You're one of the influences in his life, not just his sheriff who says, you know, racist and problematic things about, you know, warehousing people and stuff like that. Not just him, but you, the person who's providing this person with this entertainment. You are educating this 31-year-old police officer, entertaining, but educating this 31-year-old police officer on how to think about black people, how to think about this. And next time somebody is trying to make that better, please don't tell them that, oh, they need to be fired. I mean, why do they have to get all like, let's make positive black stuff? Why do they need to get all? No. That stuff is necessary. It's so important, because people die because that stuff isn't done right. People die because they don't pay enough attention to those things. They think, oh well, you know, oh it doesn't matter. It's just a movie. It's just a this. I understand that humans can both be good and bad, and you have to show all sides. But I saw a Hollywood movie a few years ago. That was a pretty good film, but what I didn't like about it was that, like, you know, the only appearance of black people in this entire movie were just like these guys on the streets that were being total assholes to, you know, one of the main characters, and that was it. And it wasn't that I minded that. I waited for longer and longer to see somebody else, a black accountant, a black person who was like, you know, a nice teacher, or an EMT, just whatever. I waited for another appearance that was different from that, but there was none. And I was like, well, why did these, like, you know, actors even accept this role? But of course, when you accept a role, you don't know the greater context that it's going to be put into. You know, and also, you know, sometimes it's just money. You just want to put food on the table. You don't care if they cast you as whatever. I get that. But it really just made me concerned about how, like, you know, they could do that and realize that, you know, you can't just create, you know, art and create content like that just portrays certain people in this only one way, and then have no other appearance of people on that kind anywhere in something like 2 hours long, and not realize that there's an irresponsibility in doing that. So I guess the point I'm making is, at the end of the day, I end up feeling like we're all responsible. We're all responsible, you know, for making these things better and getting engaged in these issues in a way that matters. So if you're in a room of people and they're making kind of decisions that have to do with that, try to stand up for them doing the right thing, and really taking to your heart, taking the context that, like, really people die because people don't do these things right. People die because people don't care enough. It's not like, oh, it's no big deal if we make it. No, it is a big deal. These perceptions make a difference, because there are people in this world that are equipped with guns that make decisions based on just like their instinct, or their like, they just feel one kind of way because of an impression they had. And we have the power to really make those things as good as we can, and we should take that into consideration all the time. So, which brings me to another topic. One of the things I dislike the most when people talk about the issue of, police brutality, is when they say, well, those kinds of neighborhoods have many issues anyway. Look at all those shootings that happened in, that like poor, rundown community last week. Look at all that. So what? So what? You know what? You know why there's a big difference? All those situations can be avoided by anybody who chose to avoid it. I don't go out worried about like, oh, so, that person might, it's like those are all situations that can be avoided. You can make a decision not to go to a certain party because you don't know the kind of people are going to be there. You're going to make the decision to walk on the other kind of the street because you feel a certain way about a certain person. The freedom to associate with whoever you want controls all those other situations completely. I understand that sometimes people are poor and they have to live in certain areas, or they're stuck in whatever, but still I'm saying the same thing, that all those are situations that people who want to control it can make efforts to control it. An interaction with a police officer is something you have no control over. I can't, if a police officer wants is pulling you over or walking up to you, you can't be like, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go for me, so I'm going to walk over there. So yeah, I don't feel like this is a cool part of it. You can't do that. They have authority, and if you choose to do that and you kind of want to, then they'll be like, you've done something wrong. We're chasing you with it. You don't have the option. They're empowered by the government to get to stop you and talk to you and do what they will. And so it's a completely different scenario. So with giving them that much power, there's just going to be more scrutiny, and there's going to be more sense of like, they're going to be held to a high standard. So it's perfectly okay to hold police to a high standard, because you can't just say, oh, well, I don't like how you're talking to me. I don't like you, so I'm not going to talk to you. You can't do that with them. You can do that with everybody else. Everybody else, you can just dissociate yourself with them. You can, like I said, you could agree not to go to that party, not to drive in that neighborhood, not to walk on the same side of the street as that person. You can do all of those things and all those other examples people give. So I feel like it's not the same at all, not by a long shot. Because because you're comparing situations that can be avoided to situations that are impossible. What do you think Elijah McClain could have done to avoid the situation he ended up in? What do you think he could have done? Nothing. What do you think that Floyd could have done to avoid the situation that he was in? Nothing. So it's just like, so, I mean, I rest my case. I just don't think that you can compare those situations at all. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that, that you're going to hold police to a high standard because they're given all this unfettered authority. And it's but at the same time, I will say that it's not just their fault. We're all responsible. Everything that the media does, that people who make movies do, that people who in politics do, and it's so funny because they do so many of these things for short gain, for profit, for short-term gain, for whatever. And it's almost like we kill ourselves on the inside because we just want to hurry up and be this, hurry up and make money, and hurry up and be that. And then at the end of the day, we look for scapegoats and we say things like, well, he was kind of like, some 31-year-old who was in some activities, but no one in his high school remembers him because kind of a loner. Yeah, it's all his fault. No, it's not. It's the fault of the entire society he lives in, because they play a lot of games and they don't own up to it. So I would just say that we're all responsible. We all just need to do better and just be more, be more assertive when we're in situations where we can make a difference, and when we're in situations where we can, help create situations that are not problematic or stereotypical or things like that. That's all it's all for the moment.